Hello to all my cinematic criminals, this is DS Lyons of the movie Blues, coming at you today with a spoiler-free review of M. Night Shyamalan's new movie Trap, starring Josh Hartnett.
My own recipe, guaranteed to jack you up.
And then make sure you stick around after the review, because I'm going to be breaking down Night After Night, an event at the Kimmel Center in Philadelphia hosted by M. Night Shyamalan, with music from his first 8 films played by the Philly Orchestra and conducted by the original composer, James Newton Howard. And oh my god, we sat next to M. Night's daughters and the star of Trap for the whole night, but we'll get there. Stick with me. And for more content like this, please smash that subscribe button below. Let's get it started. Like it or not, we are living in a world of legacy sequels, soft reboots, and the endless cycling of pre-existent IP like a cursed washing machine. And somewhere in that mess, in the same year that they've destroyed the Ghostbusters, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and more, I guess you'll have to call me crazy for finding refreshment in another original M. Night Shyamalan thriller. Gone should be the days of trying to hold up any new M. Night picture against his initial run of absolute classics. And anyone trying to do so might end up as foolish as a guy walking into The Irishman, hoping that it'll best Goodfellas.
I don't think so.
Much like his peers and influences, our boy Night is getting older. But unlike Scorsese and Spielberg, Night is still trying to follow the original path that he laid out during his initial run in the early 2000s. While most elderly statesmen end up making non-fiction movies and easy Oscar dramas in their twilight years, Night is back to trying to recapture some of the magic from his first few-film run. And that run consisted of simple and effective thrillers written and directed by Shyamalan, with an emphasis on classy twists and creepy, convoluted stories that all managed to fly under the R-rated radar. Night has tried, much like Spielberg and Scorsese, to branch out, experiment, and follow his heart. And in all those instances, he had failed pretty miserably. Once Hollywood's darling, the desolation of M. Night's career was swift, brutal, and exhausting, like The Happening.
Plan on murdering me in my sleep?
What? No!
As his best ideas began to dry up, while his newfound commercial attempts like Avatar and After Earth nearly destroyed his entire future in cinema.
You're wrong! I'm not a coward! I'm not a coward!
I am a surgeon!
Then, after the brutality of his errors and the string of failures had finally done their damage, Night quietly re-emerged, determined to create more of the kinds of films that elevated him above his contemporaries nearly 2 decades ago. Split, Old, and Knock at the Cabin are all in the realm of new age night thrillers. Movies that can nowhere near capture the strength and maturity of films like Unbreakable and The Sixth Sense, but also films that shouldn't be easily dismissed as forgettable or entirely disposable either. This new era of Shyamalan is marked by creative casting, punchy and pulpy scripts mostly written by Shyamalan himself, and films that could have subbed out for top-tier Twilight Zone episodes from when we were kids. He isn't mimicking Black Mirror with horrific social commentary. He isn't mimicking this new generation of talent like Jordan Peele, who injected elevated concepts and layered messaging into simple horror yarns. He is unabashedly being the M. Night we all know and love, or love to hate. A filmmaker who makes thrillers in earnest, a creative who keeps changing lanes while still feeling undeniably his own, and an auteur who is excelling at making self-funded, small-budget horror films that can appeal to the whole family. Alas, his faults are still there in all of his films. His off-putting and aged-out sense of humor, his constant riffing on doofy Gen Z lingo.
May not live in the hood, may not carry no chrome, may not be allowed a cell phone at dinner.
That feels so clearly written by a boomer.
Oh, and no mental. I was like Mel Gibson at the end of a Lethal Weapon rental.
Mel, I don't know how to do this.
And a complete lack of awareness when it comes to plot logic in the name of pulling off some big scares or a high-concept horror story. M. Night knows that he's not making high art. He is very aware of his flaws and very unwilling to do anything about them. And in that way, he is still kind of that punk rock M. Night that we all once fell in love with. Turns out that Trap fits in perfectly with this new era of his films. It's anchored by a brilliant performance by Josh Hartnett. I mean, I can't say enough about how nuanced, bonkers, and frankly creepy he is in this movie. Much like Mel Gibson, Bruce Willis, James McAvoy, or even Dave Bautista, Night has a great way of creating these affectionate, hardened, but utterly memorable lead characters in his films. played by actors giving unexpected performances that test the limits of their range. And Hartnett holds that mantle up perfectly here, with his portrayal of the serial killer, the Butcher, being every bit as strange and powerful as the Beast from Split. Like that film, Trap does a great job of giving Hartnett's character pathos, a bit of lore, and even quaint traits to make the Butcher a villain you can understand, marvel at, and invest in. Unlike the fantastical and satirical Old and Knock at the Cabin, Trap actually was full of some pretty well-earned tension. I mean, I was verklempt watching it. One thing that Night has really lost track of with his last 4 or so movies is actual tension. I mean, I felt absolutely nothing watching Bruce Willis drown in a puddle in glass. The guy has lost some of his magic in that sense, but in Trap, while it's devoid of any supernatural elements, unlike mostly all of his films since The Sixth Sense, it is one of the first fully grounded M. Night films, and I think that he did a great job of making the stakes feel real and making the tension only increase as the film reaches its crescendo. I'm not fully sure why people hated this movie. I mean, I know that a lot of people aren't going to vibe with Shyamalan's kitschy and weird and kind of off-putting sense of humor.
So what does crispy mean?
It means something is good. Dude, your house is crispy.
So if I were to come to somebody's house and say, your house is extra fried.
Don't ever say that.
Why? Extra fried is better than crispy.
Stop.
And maybe some horror fans were off-put by this film's utter lack of violence. I mean, there was not a single drop of blood actually in this movie. In general, I'd say that this generation doesn't really appreciate the art that is the PG-13 horror film, like The Others or The Ring from the early 2000s and a lot of Shyamalan's work. To them, a PG-13 horror movie is just a Blumhouse movie about a AI robotic doll that does backflips and jumps out of a closet every once in a while. Plus, today's generation just has no reverie for M. Night's earlier career, for his successes, for the kind of weird things that he does that show up in this movie that would be appreciated by a long-term fan, but just kind of cringed at and ignored by everybody else. To them, they wanted this movie to be a bloody scarefest. And when they ended up getting a tense and creative PG-13 thriller, it just didn't feel like a full meal. In terms of why my generation isn't fully connecting with Trap, I blame that on the unending grudge that people have towards Night's films to begin with, after decades of disappointment and loss. And I can't really blame them there. But I urge anyone who still has their head in the sand about Night's new career resurgence to check out Old, Knock at the Cabin, Split, and now Trap. Maybe all in the same weekend, and top it off with his brilliant series Servant, which I think really ignited his creativity in the horror space again. I also don't picture many guys with beards my age connecting with this film's Taylor Swift-esque pop star plotline either, but I found it quite awesome and fairly accurate when it came to how large-scale arena concerts operate. And this movie did reach out to me because it is in a space that I find interesting and relevant to myself as a formerly touring musician, as a resident of the city of Philadelphia. I mean, there was a lot for me to kind of Leonardo DiCaprio point at in this movie. I'm very familiar with global pop stars. I have a video on this channel about how much I love The Idol. Yeah, I'm into this kind of thing. Not into Taylor Swift, more of a Charlie XCX, Caroline Polachek family, but that's for a different video. And within that niche setting, a different director could have made a far dumber, far less believable, far more immersion-breaking concert horror movie. But again, I really think that M. Night and his daughter and the star of the film, Saleka, did a fantastic job of creating a credible catalog and live performance for a fictional pop star. Hell, I might even go back and listen to some of these bops again. They're pretty infectious, I'm not gonna lie. From a logic point of view, from a, let's pick everything apart and see how it works point of view, yeah. This movie is a bit of a fairy tale that asks you to make some reaches, much like all of Shyamalan's movies. I mean, when you think about it, there are so many layers of suspension of disbelief that you have to buy into, from The Sixth Sense through Signs all the way to this. Night may have said that Lady in the Water was his fairy tale, but most of his movies have that dreamy, ethereal, no logical kind of way about them that makes them kitschy and interesting, although I will say that is not a fully valid excuse to be a bad writer, but I don't think we're gonna fix that with Night now. We kind of got what we got.
Like, I don't know how to do this.
There is a certain level of meta-brained, heightened reality and a twisted sense of humor behind all of Night's recent work. Trap is not above any of that.
It's a trap. Wow. Here?
Movies like Split and Trap ask you to stretch what you know about a given topic, imbuing it with certain traits and characteristics that simply need to be swallowed for immersion's sake. And yeah, I can't blame somebody for not vibing with that, for not vibing with M. Night's current career weirdness, but I'm all here for it. And so yeah, I loved Trap. Sue me, kill me, I don't care. It had some solid twists, although the film wasn't fully built around one. And there was enough in this movie to keep me on the edge of my white trash electronic reclining sofa. It had some serious earned and sustained tension. It even had a solid fourth act where Josh Hartnett got to truly blossom from hokey and lovable dad to full-on maniac in really satisfying ways. Hartnett is just godly in this movie, with his most affable and fake qualities being as unnerving as his turn into a fully fledged psycho by the time the credits roll. Even if you hate Shyamalan but love Hartnett's work, you will bask in the glory of his performance here. I mean, honestly, I think this was a top 3 performance for him ever, and it's worth celebrating. So yeah, once again, it's starting to feel like the critics and the audience are slowly turning on M. Night Shyamalan. And anything I can do to stop that, I will, because as a native of Philadelphia and a lifelong M. Night fan, I fully believe that he is an auteur worth fighting for. He's still fully committed to writing all of his own movies, something that most of his auteur colleagues quickly abandoned in their later years. He's still invested in making his audience squirm, staying firmly in the PG-13 horror thriller space that helped propel him into the stratosphere back in 1999 with The Sixth Sense. Say what you will about M. Night's plot holes, his reliance on a good twist, his critiques and cliches, he is a filmmaker whose intentions are earnest, whose talent is still very strong, and an artist whose motivation is just to keep pushing forward against the waves of hate and skepticism of the general public. M. Night Shyamalan is a creative director, a unique voice, and one of the last untainted and untoxic figures from Hollywood who's willing to chase after his own vision still to this day. Flaws and all, Trap fits in perfectly with his late-stage filmography, offering up a nail-biting, often funny, and fully realized horror experiment that is an homage to the Hitchcockian classic thrillers that he was clearly raised on. Well shot, well-mannered, and fun for the whole family, M. Night has created yet another PG-13 slammer that may not break the mold, but is a glorious creation in and of itself. I love this run of wacky, weird, intense M. Night thrillers, and I hope that the volley of negativity around this movie doesn't deter M. Night from doing what he does best, making fully original work crafted to simply get under our skin. Here's to a man who simply never gives up, and much like the central serial killer of the movie, The Butcher, M. Night is forever wriggling out of his own demise, forever evolving, and endlessly escaping the grasp of those who are trying to take him down. Now that we've taken a look at Trap, I wanted to share the experience that my wife and I had at Night After Night, an event at the Kimmel Center in Philadelphia hosted by M. Night Shyamalan, with music from his first 8 films, played by the Philly Orchestra and conducted by the original composer, living legend James Newton Howard.
M. Night Shyamalan's films twist, scare, shock. Hear the music that drives the thrill when M. Night Shyamalan hosts Night After Night with the Philadelphia Orchestra, one night only, September 20th.
So we drove into downtown Philly, the city we call home, on an overcast evening in September to check out the show. Not the first time I've driven into the old city for an M. Night event, as I was reminded on the drive about how I had once auditioned to be Bruce Willis's son in Unbreakable, in an open casting call near City Hall nearly 3 decades ago that landed me on the news. And yeah, I didn't get the part, but a lot of people in this city have had an experience like that with the crew or shooting of an M. Night movie.
As you guys know, Philly is that's my jam. So, everywhere I go, I'm in Berlin and Madrid, and they're all like, Philadelphia, Philadelphia, and I'm like, that's right, remember it.
So there's no better venue for this event to take place than the prestigious Kimmel Center, in the Marian Anderson Hall, where the Philly Orchestra typically performs and dwells. So my wife and I are pretty Hollywood-obsessed individuals, I guess you could say, spending our free time vacationing in California, visiting movie studios and sets from our favorite movies and TV shows. Always on the hunt for a celebrity sighting, but never finding success. I mean, one time we saw Malin Ackerman at Whole Foods, but we were too terrified to say anything. I told Rachel to keep her eyes peeled for any potential movie star or film legend who may have wanted to see this momentous M. Night event. And we got so much more than we bargained for, because as we were literally scanning the room for famous faces, M. Night's daughters, Ishana and Saleka, Ishana being the director of the recent film The Watchers and much of the show Servant on Apple TV+, and Saleka, the star of Trap, sat down directly next to us. I mean, I had literally been editing footage for my trap review with Saleka less than an hour before being here. And now my wife and I were bright red and in a state of total shock as Lady Raven herself graced us with her presence. And yeah, these girls seemed just so down to earth. Saleka gladly took photos with us and seemed so happy to be there and get some praise from her new fan base. We told her we loved Trap, and after asking her if she was nervous to be at a concert after starring in a concert horror movie, Saleka told us that she was just so happy to be in such a sentimental environment with her family, so she was at ease. And that was truly the theme of the night, as M. Night spoke several times throughout the evening and even did a sit-down half-hour chat with James Newton Howard on stage. You could just feel so much love in the room. From M. Night to his city and family, from James Newton Howard to M. Night over their decades-long friendship and collaboration, to both M. Night and Howard's complete adoration for the Philadelphia Orchestra and their selected soloists who graced us with their talent in such an opulent and incredible venue. It was a celebration of Night, but also of James Newton Howard as a visionary himself. He spent the night not only reminiscing with M. Night, but providing so much wisdom in and around each and every performance. At one point, he said that a film's score is truly the final rewrite of a movie, and I found that to be pretty profound.
But the most important version of that is the music. And basically the music becomes kind of the heart of the character, and it gives you such nuance to what the character is feeling. It's so powerful. It's like just another script that's put on top of the script. So it's a very, very important part of it. A film is 50-50 with the rest of all the rest of the things that we do. And so it's incredibly important. What I decided to do as a living was to kind of mix genres. And I think sometimes people, when they refer to my movies, they go, "Oh, you make scary movies." And I go, I guess so.
All in all, this was a truly magical experience as a Philly resident, as an M. Night fan, and as a lifelong musician. It was like getting to watch two members of a band that truly loved each other and spent decades together kind of catch up and appreciate where they came from and the work that they did. It was so surreal to see Saleka reacting to the music that probably played in her house throughout her whole childhood, bobbing her head to familiar themes throughout the night. Howard is about to release an album through Sony's classical division of all of his best M. Night collaborations, expanded into longer suites with new music added, and this is what they played throughout the night. These were cuts from that expanded presentation. We got the main themes from The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, Signs, The Village, After Earth, The Last Airbender, all of which were moving, powerful, and flawlessly recreated by this otherworldly assembly of musicians. As we walked to the car, starstruck and full on the emotion and sense of family that pulsed through the halls of the Kimmel Center that night, I only further understood why I love M. Night's films and why I defend him to this day, and why I think that he will be looked back at as one of the most unique talents of our time. Because M. Night Shyamalan respects his city, where he came from, who he's worked with, and more than everything, the love of his family. And that's a strong example as a multi-generational artist to be setting in this disturbing day and age. Night After Night was a beautiful experience and an evening with an auteur that I won't soon forget. Other than that, I am DS Lyons of the Movie Blues. Thanks for joining us today, and we will see you later.